She was shamed by the whole town, until a silent cowboy stepped forward and claimed a child that wasn't his. What he did next changed everything. Willow Creek was the kind of frontier town where nothing stayed secret for long. A single whisper could spread across every porch, saloon table, and dusty street in a matter of minutes. That evening, the wind carried the smell of rain. Horses clopped lazily on the road, and people crowded around the general store, eager for gossip more than groceries. Emily Carter walked quietly down the wooden steps of her small home. She wore a simple blue dress and a shawl she had stitched herself. Her hands gently rested on her belly, a gesture she did without thinking. She wasn't showing much yet, but enough for curious eyes to notice. After her husband's death 2 years ago, she kept mostly to herself. Some people respected her silence, others used it as an excuse to invent stories. As Emily stepped into the general store, the bell above the door jingled. Every head turned. She felt the weight of their stares, heavy and sharp. She picked up flour, soap, and a tin of tea, but the murmurs grew louder with each step she took. Near the counter, 3 rough-talking ranch hands leaned against a barrel. Their boots were muddy, their hats tilted, and their eyes full of mischief. One of them, a man with a crooked grin and tobacco-stained teeth, let out a laugh loud enough for Emily to hear. "Well, look who's with child," he sneered, elbowing his friend. "I wonder if she even knows who the father is." Another one laughed. "Or maybe she wants the whole town to guess." The store went silent. Emily froze, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, but nothing came out. All she could feel was shame, burning across her cheeks and fear, tightening her throat. Just then the sound of boots echoed through the store, slow, steady, confident. The kind of footsteps that made people move aside without being asked. A tall cowboy walked in, Luke Maddox. His coat was dusty from the trail, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his eyes sharp as steel. Without hesitation, he walked straight to Emily and gently took her trembling hand. He faced the crowd, voice firm and clear. "If she's expecting," he said, "it's my child." Gasps erupted. Someone dropped a tin can. The ranch hands stared speechless. Emily looked up at Luke, stunned, because she knew this wasn't true. And she knew this lie would change everything. Emily pulled Luke outside the crowded store before the whispers behind them grew any louder. The second they stepped into the cool evening air, she snatched her hand back, her voice shaky and breathless. "Luke, why would you say that in front of everyone?" she asked, trying to calm her racing heart. "You're putting yourself in danger." Luke leaned against the porch rail, the fading sunlight glinting off his dusty hat. He didn't look shaken or worried, just calm, like he had expected her reaction. "I said it because those men had no right to talk to you like that," he replied. "And I wasn't about to stand there and watch you get humiliated." Emily shook her head, her eyes filling with tears she didn't want him to see. "But you know the baby isn't yours." "I know," Luke said simply. "I never claimed otherwise to you." He pushed off the railing and stood in front of her, lowering his voice. "Emily, this town isn't kind to people who can't defend themselves. You looked terrified in there, so I stepped in." Emily's throat tightened. Part of her wanted to be angry. Part of her wanted to be grateful. Part of her wished the truth wasn't so complicated. "I don't need your pity," she whispered. Luke's expression softened. "It isn't pity. It's respect." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily's hands trembled, so she pressed them against her belly. The child inside her was innocent. But the story, behind the pregnancy, the real story, was something she had kept locked away. She took a deep breath. "Luke, the father didn't abandon me," she said quietly. "He disappeared." Luke frowned. "Disappeared how?" Emily hesitated. She hadn't told anyone, not even the sheriff. "We were supposed to get married. He left for Dry Hollow to buy land papers. I got a letter saying he'd be home in 3 days. That was 2 months ago." Luke's jaw tightened. "Did you tell the sheriff?" Emily shook her head. "I thought maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he got scared. But now I don't know." Luke stared out toward the mountains, his eyes narrowing. "Something doesn't add up. Men don't vanish without leaving a trace." Emily stepped closer, fear creeping into her voice. "Please don't get involved. Whoever did something to him, I don't want them coming after you too." Luke looked back at her, his voice low and steady. "I already am involved. I made that clear in front of half the town." He gently tipped his hat. As long as people think I'm the father, no one will touch you. That's a promise. Emily's heart pounded. She didn't know whether to thank him or fear what this promise would cost him. One thing was certain. Luke Maddox wasn't backing away. Not now. Not ever. After Luke's bold declaration, Willow Creek became a boiling pot of rumors. Some townsfolk smiled kindly at Emily now, offering help or soft words. Others glared at her from shaded porches, whispering that Luke Maddox had no business getting mixed up with a widow, carrying another man's child. Luke didn't seem to care. He spent the next few days quietly staying close, never too close, never pushing, just making sure Emily wasn't alone. He helped her load feed onto her wagon, repaired a broken fence post on her property, and walked her home from the general store when the stairs grew too sharp. Emily appreciated the protection, but it made her uneasy. Every time Luke stood beside her, she felt the weight of the lie he had told, a lie he carried without complaint. And the truth about Daniel haunted her more each day. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Emily walked to the creek to fetch water. The air smelled of pine and dust, and the water sparkled as if nothing bad could possibly exist in the world. But Emily's peace didn't last long. A shadow fell over her. She spun around and found Sheriff Dalton standing there, his expression serious and eyes tired as if he hadn't slept in days. "Emily," he said quietly, removing his hat. "We found something out near Red Ridge." Her breath caught. "Something of Daniel's?" The sheriff nodded and reached into his coat. He pulled out a pocket watch, bent, dirty, and cracked down the center. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. She recognized it instantly. She had given Daniel that watch on his last birthday. "Where was this?" she whispered. Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat. "Near a campsite. The fire was out, but the ground was black. Looks like someone wanted to burn every sign of what happened there." The world spun around Emily. Daniel wasn't the type to disappear. He wouldn't leave her pregnant and alone. Something terrible had happened. Something someone wanted to erase. Before she could speak, Luke's voice cut through the trees. "Sheriff," he said, riding up fast. "What's going on?" Dalton explained, and Emily saw Luke's face tighten with anger and worry. "This wasn't an accident," Luke said firmly. "Someone tried to make Daniel disappear." The sheriff nodded slowly. "And whoever did it, they're still out there." That night, Emily found a piece of paper nailed to her door. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Stop asking about Daniel, or you'll be next." Her scream echoed into the darkness. The warning note on Emily's door changed everything. Luke refused to leave her alone even for a minute. Sheriff Dalton doubled his patrol near her property, but Emily still felt eyes watching her from the shadows. Every creak in the house, every rustle outside made her jump. The fear wasn't just for herself anymore, it was for her baby, for the truth, and for the man who had disappeared without a trace. The next morning, Luke arrived early, his face tight with determination. "We're done waiting," he said. "If someone wants to scare us, we'll go find answers instead." Sheriff Dalton agreed to help, and together, the three of them rode toward Red Ridge, the place where the burnt campsite had been found. The wind was cold that day, and the sky looked heavy, as if holding back a storm. When they reached the ridge, Luke dismounted and knelt beside the blackened earth. "Fresh boot prints," he murmured. "Big ones. Too deep for Daniel's feet." Sheriff Dalton examined the ground and nodded grimly. "Tracks lead south, toward the old Miller barn." Emily's chest tightened. That barn had been abandoned for years. No one went there unless they wanted to hide. They followed the trail through tall grass and dusty paths, their silence heavy with worry. When they reached the barn, its wooden walls were weathered and half collapsed, the doors barely hanging on their hinges. Luke motioned for Emily to stay behind him. "Stay close." They pushed open the door and sunlight spilled across the dim interior. Emily gasped. There, tied to a support beam, bruised, exhausted but alive, was Daniel Harper. Emily rushed forward, falling to her knees beside him. "Daniel, oh my God, Daniel!" He opened his swollen eyes, trying to speak through cracked lips. "Emily, I didn't leave you. Someone took me." Luke and the sheriff quickly untied him, helping him sit up. Daniel coughed weakly before forcing out the truth. "It was Mayor Higgins," he whispered. "I found out he's been burning ranches to push families off their land. He wants the whole valley. I confronted him, so he had his men ambush me." Emily felt sick. Luke clenched his fists, rage burning in his eyes. Before they could move Daniel outside, the barn door slammed shut with a thunderous bang. Mayor Higgins stood there with 3 armed men, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Well," he snarled, "I see I should have tied all of you up." Luke stepped forward, hand hovering near his gun. "You won't get away with this, Higgins." Higgins laughed coldly. "I already did." But before he could order his men to fire, the sheriff gave a sharp whistle. Deputies burst in from the shadows, guns drawn ready. "You're under arrest," Dalton said. "We heard everything." Higgins' smile finally faded. With Mayor Higgins behind bars and his men arrested, Willow Creek slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. But for Emily, peace didn't come as quickly. The nightmare of the past months, Daniel's disappearance, the threats, the lies, left her shaken. Even so, every sunrise felt a little brighter now that Daniel was alive and safe. Daniel spent weeks recovering in the small clinic near the town square. Emily visited him every afternoon, bringing soup, fresh bread, and gentle conversation. He held her hand often, squeezing it with the warmth she remembered. Yet something inside her felt different, heavier, complicated. Luke stayed in the background, watching over her without demanding attention. He fixed her front gate, brought firewood, fed her horses, quiet acts that said more than words ever could. He never pressured her, never spoke about the lie he told at the general store. He simply made sure she was safe. One golden evening, after helping her bring water from the well, Luke handed her the bucket and tipped his hat. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said softly. Emily surprised herself by asking, "Luke, will you stay a moment?" He paused, eyes searching hers. "Of course." But before she could speak, Daniel appeared at the gate, leaning on a cane, still weak but upright. "Emily?" Daniel said with a shaky smile. "I've been wanting to talk to you." Luke nodded once, ready to leave them alone. But Emily reached out and lightly touched his arm. "Please, stay!" Daniel looked between them, confusion flickering across his face. He took a deep breath. "Emily," he said gently, "I never meant to leave you. I wanted to marry you, to be a father. I still do." His words were kind, honest, full of the man she once loved. Emily felt her heart twist. "I know you didn't abandon me," she whispered. "And I'm grateful you're alive." Daniel stepped closer. "Then let's start fresh. We can raise the baby together." For a long moment, the world felt silent. Emily looked at Daniel, familiar, safe, tied to her past. Then she turned to Luke, steady, brave, the man who protected her when she had no one else. "Daniel," she said softly, "you'll always have a place in this child's life. But while you were gone, something changed in me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Changed how?" Emily reached for Luke's hand. He froze, stunned. "I realized who stood beside me when everything fell apart," she said. "Who risked his life without asking anything in return. My heart, it chose him." Luke swallowed, disbelief flashing in his eyes. "Emily, are you sure?" She nodded with tears forming. "Yes, you saved me long before you even knew the truth." Daniel looked down, pain in his eyes. But after a moment he gave a small, respectful nod. "If he makes you happy, then I won't stand in the way." Luke stepped closer, his hand tightening around hers as if afraid she'd disappear. "I'll protect you and that baby with everything I have," he whispered. Emily smiled through her tears. "I know." As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting warm light over the 3 of them, Emily felt a future unfolding, one she never expected, but one she welcomed with her whole heart. Willow Creek never forgot the day a cowboy grabbed a woman's hand and claimed a child that wasn't his, only to become the man destiny had chosen all along.